Welcome to Maryland LCV's Friday Digest. I'm Kim Coble, and we are going to give it another minute because we're still having people come in. In the meantime, please put your name and where you're from in the chat. And I saw that some of you have already started, so welcome back, you guys, and you know the drill. We'll start in 1 minute. Okay, welcome again. I'm Kim Coble, Executive Director of the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and it's great to have you join us for our Friday Digest here between 12 and 12:30 on Fridays. We try to present to you kind of topics that we're being involved in, discussed at the legislature, or of special interest. And today, I think we have a really great topic to talk to you about. It's clean energy and Maryland's energy future. Before we jump in, I want to remind you that please enter your name and where you're from in the chat. And if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or the question and answer, and we'll try to get to them at the end. We are prompt about ending at 12:30, so hopefully we'll get to your question if we have time at the end. Our goal on these Friday Digests is to make sure you have the information you need to be an informed and engaged and inspired advocate for the environment. So if you are interested in a topic that we haven't discussed so far, please let us know. We will be sending you a survey immediately after the this Friday Digest, and you can put ideas for topics in there, which we would welcome. We're trying to make them timely and informative. So meeting your needs is our goal. So please let us know. Then, and as I said, put questions and answers in the chat box. Today, we are discussing an important and timely topic, which is Maryland's energy future. We want to help you understand the facts about the current situation. There's a sentiment out there that there's an energy crisis on our hands. Is that true? What policies do we need to meet that moment? And in order to shape this conversation, I want you to think about a three-legged stool. One is abundancy of energy. Do we have enough energy? Is there enough to avoid brownouts and blackouts? And what does that abundancy look like as demand increases? Number two, we want affordable energy. And I know that when I opened up my electric bill, it's stunningly high. And we know it's going to get higher. So how do we make energy more affordable for people? What kind of actions over the long term will help us save money as ratepayers? Abundant, affordable, and most importantly is the last one for us, and that's clean energy. We want energy coming from sources that are not counterproductive to the state's goals. We want energy that's coming from sources that support our environment, our children, our communities. So we're going to talk about clean energy as well. So around that three-legged stool, and based in the idea about whether or not there's a crisis, I can't tell you how joyful I am to have Susan Stevens Miller join me today. She's a senior attorney with Earthjustice and an expert in this field. She worked at the Public Service Commission, and she has a long resume with a lot of good background. I will be honest, as we are dealing with over 100 energy-related bills in this General Assembly this year, Susan is on speed dial for me. So I'm really happy that she could join us. So let's get started. And a reminder to put your questions in the question and answers. So let me get my notes up here. Okay. So Susan, welcome. You've been on Friday Digest before, so it's great to have you back. But let me just start out with your impression on this energy crisis in Maryland and what your sense of that crisis is. If it's real, is it stated, are we understating it? Is it more immediate than is being expressed?
Well, I think we need to divide it up, and you did well with your three-legged stool. One is, do we have enough resources? Do we have enough generation out there to give us the power we need? The Public Service Commission at the very beginning of this session was testifying before Triple E, I believe it was, and said that it's their job to check resource adequacy all the time, and they have no doubt that we have enough power through at least 2031. So the idea that we're desperate and we need to start building things because the lights are going to go out. I hate when people start talking about the lights going out and all. It's just a fear tactic. That just simply, there is no proof of that. And the people who are experts and who are unbiased and in charge of investigating that have said no, that's not the case. We do have an affordability crisis. The cost of power has gone up far too much and too quickly. And there are a number of causes of that. One is PJM has done such a horrible job. They had that horrible capacity auction. Capacity auction is how they determine who is saying they're going to be available to put power into the market, and they get paid for that availability. Well, they had a horrible auction where prices went up, I believe in some cases over 100%, some cases even more than that. And so that was a few weeks ago, all the press that was going, because Pennsylvania came in and said, we're filing a complaint. So right away, PJM said, oh, well, we'll put a cap on it. So PJM knows it messed up. It's very slow to fix things. And it's also very into traditional generation and not into renewables, which is a problem in and of itself. So that's one thing that harmed affordability. The other thing that has harmed affordability is essentially BGE and PEPCO, and their BGE's multi-year rate case has caused rates to go up higher than inflation every year. Their replacement of their gas pipelines, if you have gas heat, they just decided that they want to replace every gas pipeline in their system. Whether it leaks, whether it's old, it needs it, they're using this as an excuse, and they make a profit on replacing. They don't make a profit on repairing, which is why they would rather replace everything than repair it. So those things, and PEPCO also has had a significant increase, not quite as much as BGE, but over the years. As a matter of fact, in their last multi-year rate case, the commission denied them a multi-year rate and said you have to do a yearly rate, but their rate still went up. So those are the problems, and that's an affordability problem. It's not a resource problem.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you would say I love the way you put it, we don't have an energy uh, uh, resource adequacy crisis. We do have enough energy, at least for the short term over the next 5, 6 years, but we do have an affordability crisis around energy. Right. Okay. Well said. So let's go back to whether or not we have enough energy. And we, 40% of Maryland's energy comes from out of state, correct? And 60% or so is generated in state. And there's a lot of discussion about increasing the amount of energy we produce in state, that is a really important solution and next step as we move forward. What are your thoughts on that?
There's never anything wrong with having more energy in your state than outside your state because it saves you transmission costs and congestion costs and things like that. But since we're not in a resource adequacy problem, what we should do is we should be more circumspect about how we're doing it. The knee-jerk reaction shouldn't be, we need more power, let's build gas-fired power plants because we all know how to do that. What we really need to do is obviously the commission has already said we have years with regard to resource adequacy, and it may be beyond 2031. That's just the only point they were willing to commit to at this hearing. Let's come up with innovative solutions for renewables. Some people have complained that the RPS isn't working. Whether that's true or not, if you believe it isn't working, well, you don't just throw it out. You fix it. It worked before. To me, it's in like a second stage. When you started it did really well and encouraged it, and now you need to go to phase 2, where you need different encouragement and different incentives in order to do it. And since we have time, that's what we should be looking at. How do we encourage battery storage? How do we encourage more solar? What do we do about geothermal? It's those solutions that we have time now, because we're not in a resource adequacy problem, that we should look at that actually can make things also more affordable because those things actually have been found to cost less than your traditional generation anyway. So
Yeah. So let me go back to, I think you made a good point. So we can generate more energy in state, which is uh it's either that or build more transmission lines, right? If we're going to increase our energy over time, we either generate it in state or we build more transmission lines, right?
that's correct.
That's correct. The other thing, as I understand it, is that the energy from out of state is, we have no say where, what that looks like. So it's often dirty energy, it's coal produced or oil produced energy. So that would again so benefit the argument to have in-state generation. So it's fair to conclude that more in-state generation of electricity is a good thing.
I think in general it is. I just want to point out one thing based on what you just said. That's true. We can't determine what Pennsylvania builds or what other states build. But I mean, part of the RPS is requiring utilities to buy and energy suppliers to buy clean power. So certainly in that way, we can determine what power comes into the state by having it be more of a requirement to purchase clean power and more of an incentive to purchase clean power that from out of state than simply just purchasing power. So there is a nuance there that could lead to more clean power, but in general, it would be better. We don't need 100% power in Maryland. I mean,
Right.
that's the other thing that people have to look at. You know, right now we get 40 from out of state. If we got 20% more, you know, would that be beneficial? Going for 100% might be a very long-term goal, but I think it's important to take it in incremental chunks as well. And
Mm,
so to
good point.
decide what we want to do, you know, we want to make an increase 5% over the next few years. You know, how do we do that?
Good. Yeah, really good point. Now, the other thing about abundancy that I'm hearing a lot is the demand is just going to skyrocket. We're going to have data centers or high energy intense users. We're electrifying our homes, we're electrifying our buildings, we're electrifying our cars. All of this is going to drive the demand up. And I just want to share with the audience that yesterday I was at a conference where some data was presented that the PJM, our regional grid, is projecting 33,000 megawatts of new demand from high intensity users such as data centers. Okay, 33,000 megawatts. And Maryland's portion of that will be 132 or 0.4%. So as these data centers get built in Northern Virginia and Pennsylvania and New York, and some in Maryland, we need to keep in mind that that demand is not as big a threat as it's being portrayed, and and therefore it shapes our energy planning goals and whatnot. Susan, any feedback on that? Do you
Well,
see
I
it
think
that way?
first of all, that's true. And part of what brings up there is we don't want to have to pay for Pennsylvania and New Jersey and all the rest of them to have more data centers. If they want them, they should pay for them. But the other thing I think is important to keep in mind is the data center and the technology is in a state of flux. I mean, right now they're claiming they need this huge amount of power, but I'm sure everyone saw the Deep Six news reports that says they use less power. And immediately when that came out, Microsoft, who's building a $3.3 billion data center in Wisconsin and has only completed phase one, put a stop to it to see what's happening. So their estimates are estimates. So
Mm,
it's important to bear
good
in
point.
mind that, you know, they're claiming now they need to power technology. What's great about technology is it changes all the time and it improves all the time. But that means makes planning difficult.
Right,
So you
right.
cannot assume that there's going to be this, what the potential for assuming there's a tremendous amount of load is we overbuild. And then we're paying for things we don't no longer need and someone still has to pay for.
That's an excellent point. And I think again it speaks to that we don't have this crisis on our hands right at the
Mhm.
moment, right? We don't have to overcorrect here. Let's be thoughtful about it. You know, this is moving us into affordability a little bit, but you gave me some great explanations not too long ago about we had Brandon Shores and Wagner are two coal-fired power plants that up in Baltimore area that are in the process of shutting down, right? And they are now used for peak moments uh, when we need extra energy because of the cold or whatnot. Um, Part of the deal that was made was the ratepayers paid an additional or contributed to an $800 million investment in 8 projects to counter the closure of those plants. Can you walk everybody through that? I thought it was very interesting how you described that.
Sure. What it is that in order to negate what would happen if you just close Wagner and Brandon Shores, they're building a transmission line to bring in power to replace that power. Now, that is an 8-step project, involving building more substations, actually taking one line and what's called reconditioning it so it can handle more, and then building one new line. But once it's done, and it's supposed to be done by the fourth quarter of 2020, I'm gonna guess here, 2029, I think it was. Then Brandon Shores and Wagner can just shut down and it'll be all taken care of by this transmission line. And we need more transmission anyway if we want more renewables. So, and that's already been baked in. They've already done 2 parts of it, so it's moving ahead. So that should be figured into people's plans as to what we need and what we don't need, because that's happening. PJM already approved it, it's already being built. So to ignore its existence is to have a blind spot about what's going on.
Right. So again, some of the arguments that we're hearing is, well, Wagner and Brandon Shores are shutting down part of the crisis. And what you're saying is that there is no crisis because it was all planned ahead
Mhm.
and paid for by ratepayers to have these transmission lines to
Well, I don't want to
counter.
say paid for. Some parts of it paid for, some of it doesn't get paid for until it actually is up and running. So
Okay.
it either has been paid for or will be paid for by
Okay.
the ratepayers.
Good correction then. So, the other part about affordability as we look at this is there's cheaper ways to produce energy, and we'll talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that in the next section here. But the I love this phrase where I've heard that the cheapest energy is that which is not used.
Mhm.
So Maryland does a good job of investing in energy efficiency programs for homeowners, especially for low income homeowners. Um, but really, that energy efficiency, wherever and however we get it, is part of the solution, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it's a vital part of the solution, particularly for low and moderate income individuals. I mean, the fact of the matter is there are a number of homes in areas like Baltimore City that it's called whole home retrofit, where you go in and rather, a lot of times an energy efficiency expert will come in and they can't fix it. They can't do the energy efficiency part right now because you have lead. And they don't want to seal your home better and have you locked in with the lead or locked in with the mold. So what whole home retrofit does is it gets all the different agencies who do all those different things together
Mm,
and
mm.
says, this is how we fix this home. So it's healthier and it has improved energy efficiency. And so it totally improves people's lives. And how the Maryland Commission does it is they have a cost benefit analysis. The benefits for our energy efficiency programs have to exceed the cost, so they're not approved. So
So
in
they work.
each instance, people are saving money, and any energy efficiency program also obviously benefits everyone because when you're using less energy, you need less generation. So it benefits the individual doing the home, and it benefits the entire state ultimately.
And makes your much more affordable. So, this year we put new insulation around our home and whatnot as an effort to try to reduce the bills. So it works, and I think it's based on. We want to think about energy efficiency at homes. We want to think about it at our workplace. We want to think about it at businesses and multi-family units. There's a lot of programs and expertise that can provide energy efficiency help. So, really encouraging that. Let's also talk, when we talk about affordability, what other aspects do you think are really important to this? How do we make energy more affordable in Maryland?
Well, one way to make it more affordable is fossil fuel generation is ultimately the most expensive generation. So putting in more solar, more battery storage and things like that, while there is an upfront cost, the actual energy people are getting from that will cost them less than the fossil fuel generation. So that in and of itself doesn't. And the other thing, our programs, some are energy efficiency and some are to help people replace things in their house. Like if you have an old electric furnace,
Mm,
if you can replace that with a heat pump and get help with paying for that,
hmm.
that will drop your bills considerably. And particularly in areas of the state which the homes don't have air conditioning. Well, a heat pump is both. It's actually a misnomer.
Hmm.
And so you're actually giving people, and because obviously we're getting warmer, you're giving people who've never had air conditioning before and now are probably going to need it more. You're actually giving them a more efficient furnace and enabling them to live more comfortably in the summer.
Okay, awesome. So one of the legislative proposals that is in front of the General Assembly this year is to build more energy in Maryland.
Mhm.
So we support the in-state generation. We talked a little bit about that. And there it is opening the door to building more natural gas plants.
Mhm.
So we would generate energy using natural gas, which is a fossil fuel. And Maryland League of Conservation Voters is against this action, and trying to work with legislators to find a solution there. But let me ask you about this as the expert. Do we need more natural gas plants? That the bill not only calls for more natural gas plants and opens the door to that, but it also expedites the process for their approval. So again, this gets them built faster and online faster because of this crisis. So what's your feelings about whether or not that makes sense for the state?
I don't think it makes sense at all. First of all, as we've discussed, there is no crisis. So why are we speeding up putting these plants in that are just going to harm the environment, set us back on our climate mandates, and aren't necessary this time? If you want to make an improved process, or an improved, it's called a CPCN. That's the permit process for being able to build a generating station. Get a speedier process for solar.
Mm,
Get a speedier process for batteries. I mean, why have a speedier process for a type of generation you don't really want that, quite frankly, is going to operate for 30 years? That's how long these plants last. So if you're talking about, oh, we need to solve a crisis, the crisis only exists now, which I don't believe it exists at all. Why are you putting something in its place that will be paid for and will, if they build it, they're going to want to run it for the entire time. So, you're taking what is at best a short-term problem that I don't agree it's even that, and putting it in a long-term solution, which definitely doesn't make sense. You want to speed things up for the type of generation you want, not just
so
any generation.
so the what you're proposing here is to expedite renewable deployment, including solar.
Mhm.
There's rooftop solar, there's community solar, there's utility solar projects. Battery storage is a technology that's out there that is underutilized in Maryland. And so let's get those expedited. What the counter argument to that is that we'll never generate enough energy to meet our demands with these renewables. And how would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, they haven't even actually proven that we'll never be able to generate. I mean, we don't build very many utility scale projects in Maryland. And we haven't really tried battery storage at all. Battery storage, I think, is going to be the thing for the future because it doesn't
Mhm.
take up as much space. In California, they had to shut down a gas-fired power plant because it caught fire twice. So they needed about 800 megawatts of power very quickly. They were able to actually replace that with battery storage in about a year, and that included doing an RFP and everything. So to me, our failure to focus on battery storage has been the real dilemma and the real problem with getting enough power without using any kind of fossil fuel.
Okay. I've been noticing here, one of the questions that came up is, so as these plants, say a gas plant gets um, proposed and potentially built, what are the environmental justice concerns that would come into play with a new plant?
Well, I think the main concern is these new plants always tend to be built right where old plants are, which tend
Mm,
to be in overburdened and underserved communities. So what's going to happen, particularly if they get an expedited process, and my recollection of the bill is it actually removes a lot of the notice and public participation permit provisions in order to build them quicker. So it's to me, it's horrendous with regard to EJ issues. But more than likely, if you want to build them fast, you have to build them where things already exist. Because you have the different interconnection and lines already there. So it's going to be built where power plants already exist and where people are already burdened by those plants.
okay. Yeah, and that's exactly how we're reading the bill as well. There needs to be much more consideration in that permitting process and location process. And unfortunately, the bill doesn't really address that. It just opens the door, and we feel like that's an important part that isn't being considered. In the last couple minutes, let me just ask you real quickly on are there other states that you feel have really managed this transition of clean energy while maintaining abundancy, reliability, and affordability?
Well, I think first of all, obviously California has no coal plants left. They've gotten rid of
Mm,
all their coal plants. They still have
mhm.
gas fire plants, and California has put a huge amount of effort and quite frankly a huge amount of money into their conversion away from any kind of fossil fuels. So they've managed it well, though they do have high prices. I won't dispute that. But Massachusetts is handling it well. New Jersey is handling it well. Um, what you find is the states that are in the eastern, mid-Atlantic eastern region are the ones who are focusing on it because they're the ones that have both, quite frankly, winters and summers. So
Mm.
they have round the clock needs, whereas some states have milder winters, so their needs are mostly summer and vice versa. But it's the eastern states and the mid-Atlantic states that have seasons. So they need to be prepared for the entire year and for right now we have a summer peak. And so, but it's expected once we start converting away from gas heat that peak will start shifting to a winter peak.
So, in the last few minutes, let's talk a little bit about what the audience can do here. There's, as we said, a number of bills, and I just saw that we've put the bill language in there, the bill numbers. And I will tell you from Maryland LCV's perspective, there's nothing more important than you contacting your legislators and
Mhm.
telling them that you want clean energy, you want
Mhm.
enough energy, you want affordable energy, and you just want to make it clean. And you believe that those can happen with good planning and fortunately, we have the time to do good planning and with some expedited efforts on the renewables. So please contact your legislators and let them know that this is really important. The Susan, what are the other key important points that you think people need to be making right now?
Well, I mean, I would never denigrate legislators. They have a very hard job. There's a lot going on. And I think a number of legislators don't necessarily even know everything that's in some of these bills because there's just
Mhm.
so much in them. So I would actually I think a number of legislators don't know that it gets rid of the provisions for notice and public participation in the expedited. So I would go in, if you can, be very focused, say, this is what they're doing and you should be aware of it and we think it's problematic. So being very focused, I think, is very helpful to them for provisions they may not have gotten to yet. The other thing I think is important is, and this is, I would have it difficult for people to do is participating before the Public Service Commission in
Mhm.
any process and things like that to let them know that what they do directly affects people and their livelihoods and how and affordability and that they have a number of times where they ask for public comments and sometimes it's disappointing because they don't get very many. And
Right.
so I think trying to participate in that as much as you can actually be helpful with regard to um at least making them aware of the impact of their decisions.
Excellent. Well, with that, I want to give a very sincere thank you to Susan, who, as I said, is on my speed dial and always a great resource. It's great to have you helping us all out. And for the audience, thank you so much for being here. I know this is difficult and technical. Believe me, I struggle with this topic every day. So we are here for you. If you have questions and you want to talk through something, or what exactly is the PJM, whatever it is, give us a ring and we'll help you kind of work through that. Don't be intimidated if you don't know every detail. Your opinion still matters to your legislator. It really does. So please, again, contact them. With that, we will be sending you a survey. Please let us know how we're doing and how we can help support you more. And thank you again for joining us. And for those of you that joined us on our lobby day, I appreciate you coming out for that too. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for inviting me.